Hey everyone, you are listening to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. This little banter is about a car ride long and features your hosts, JJ Parker and Melissa Albers. JJ owns a tech company and Melissa has been a coach working with influencers for the last 18 years.
Melissa, I thought what we should do today for our podcast is talk about the self-awareness journey roadmap that you've developed.
Cool.
Because we don't, we might refer to it sometimes on the podcast, but we certainly don't focus on it. But on the website, there's a thing called the Self-Awareness Journey Roadmap, and it's a visual, and it talks about all the same things that we talk about on the podcast, but it's like being your authentic self and your actor self, and kind of how to notice when you're in one of those two states.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So it's like, I'd say a bit more formal presentation of the stuff that we talk about every week on the podcast.
Yeah.
And then people probably don't even know, but we also have like 30, 40-minute video lessons about each one of the things on the roadmap.
Right, exactly. It's sort of the basis of all of our work.
Yep.
And that's it is the basis of all of our work.
It is the basis of all of our work. So we won't dive into exactly everything on the roadmap.
Right.
We'd encourage everyone to go check it out, like on the website. But this idea, the self-awareness journey, let's just like talk about where it started.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I think that's really interesting to kind of talk about how it came about for you.
Well, I've been a student of personal development for over 10 years. I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars and hours of time trying to develop myself and being in the room with some of the really great thought leaders around that. I've had some really cool experiences. And as I continued to develop myself, I started to find certain patterns that were emerging in my own feelings. Mm-hmm. And, the personal development world is all around think it and you can do it. It's all this mind stuff.
It's like
power through.
A lot of cheerleading, right?
Yeah,
like, let's go, you can do it.
And there's a lot of falsehood in it, actually. And
I feel like there's a lot of like bravado. It's somewhat a macho way of going about getting things done, which doesn't really, it certainly doesn't resonate for me.
Right. Like, so even some of the women thought leaders are very much around powerful, push through, and you can overcome your own obstacles. And while there's some truth to that, and they help lots and lots of people, for me, there was a little gap in there somewhere that didn't quite resonate for me. And I started to notice these patterns. My feelings were preventing me actually from, like, I reached a certain level of development, and then I kind of felt like I stalled out a little bit. And really why that was is because my feelings were not in alignment with my head and like what I was trying to create. And I noticed that certain patterns began emerging as well. And they became so pervasive in my own life that I could hardly...
And you saw those in your coaching clients too, right? I mean,
exactly.
You do professional coaching, you meet with a bunch of people every single week.
Yep. And I started to, exactly right. So during those conversations, it was so pervasive for me. I started talking about it with my coaching clients, and I'll be darned if they didn't have the exact same patterns. And so little by little, I started drawing these little groups of thinking, like, is this how you feel? And then and then this happens, and they would be like, oh my gosh. And I have chicken scratch, these little sheets of paper I would write all over the place.
Right. Just like this one that I kept from years ago.
Oh my gosh.
I'm holding it up to the camera. It's on a receipt from Caribou. Melissa had a mint, hot chocolate, no whip, plain bagel.
That's all carbs. Quit that. Put that away.
But it's like it's a rudimentary sketch of the roadmap, right? It says triggers in the middle, and it's got flow, easy, happy on the left, and it's got anxiety, judgment, hard on the right.
Yeah.
And it says guilt and shame on the bottom.
And exactly right. So it just continued to develop. That little sketch kept getting more and more developed. And every time I would draw it at the end of the coaching session, the person would say, "Can I have that?" And I'd be like, oh, I'd be so embarrassed because my writing was terrible. So then I hired a graphic artist to like come up with a better visual. Well, guess what? I hired a graphic artist who was nothing but in her head. And so she created a very starchy roadmap that looked like an operational flowchart.
Yeah.
And I thought, and my thought was, oh, this is awesome. It's so much better than my handwriting.
So you started developing this, right? And just from so everyone kind of like understands a little bit of like the time period. You and I had a company together called Choreology for quite a few years.
Yeah.
After we shut that company down, you and I kind of see each other a bit, but we weren't like actively working every day together anymore.
Right.
And that's when you started developing the early parts of the self-awareness journey. Right.
Because the choreology was all about coaching for everyone. We believed everyone should have an opportunity to develop themselves, not just the guys or women who could write checks.
Right, just not the C-suite, right? Not the executives.
Right.
I guess we probably still believe that since we're doing this.
Well, I just couldn't put that away. So even though we shut the business down, I couldn't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
Right.
So you've got your little like chicken scratch notes and this idea, right?
Yeah.
And then you're just out there. Like I was back running my other company, you were doing some coaching stuff.
Yep.
And you're like, okay, what am I gonna do with this?
Yeah.
Right. So you're sitting there by yourself, figuring out what to do with it.
Right. And I did Herculean efforts to do something with it, I should say. So like I even hired a coach and flew out to Beverly Hills for a day to sit with him and develop a whole business model around the self-awareness journey. It wasn't called that then, but
and it was a very fancy experience for you.
It was so fancy, and I came home and immediately shut down. I immediately was like, whoop, that just pushed me right smack out of, I can't do anything with this now.
Right
I'm
out of your center,
blocked, right out of my center.
Well, so I know like for you have this big idea, right? And I think this happens, it happens to a lot of people, right? We have a big idea.
Yeah.
Right? We don't exactly know where to go with it. We're looking for help, right? Yeah. And then you maybe come across people who think they can help, right? But maybe something about their approach, their energy, and maybe the thing's just too big to get your brain around. Who knows? But there wasn't an alignment there.
Well, I think that's the key. There has to be alignment in all that we do for it to actually work well and easy. And like I was mentioning, the whole personal development world is to push things out mentally. It's like, if you think it, you can be it, go do this, overcome your obstacles. But inside, if your emotions are not in alignment with that, there's a gap. Yeah. And that gap exists in people. If people are triggered, if, certain emotions, that's what happened to me is I started, some emotion in me just shut down when he started to talk about what was possible. And I felt like it wasn't me. It didn't feel like me, even though I had all this street cred. It just didn't feel right. And I didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And when if anyone's looking at the roadmap, we talk about authentic self, and then we talk about actor self, and that is like so clearly you being pushed into, like quite literally actor self in Beverly Hills. Right?
I was on Rodeo Drive. The hotel I was staying on, was on the corner of Hollywood Boulevard.
Like literally, like
Drive.
a Hollywood. You were acting like.
Yes.
It's just
It is funny now.
Such a real example.
It's very funny to say it.
So you came back from that, and I remember you and I got together, and we're in Minneapolis, and we
Yeah.
went, it's one of our favorite spots to go meet and brainstorm about things is the Guthrie Theater.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Right.
It's a beautiful
Yes. So cool.
public space. And they've got a thing they called the Infinite Bridge, right? Which is like a bridge shooting out the side of the building that hangs over. It's like the huge unsupported span.
Super cool.
And we're sitting out there, and you're showing me all the stuff
Chicken
that
scratch.
you got, and your the business plan, right? And hey, we got to develop this content and that, and this is how you do it. And I could just tell, like, it was so blocked.
Yep. Yeah, it really was. It really was. And I didn't realize that, like looking at this roadmap, I was really, really triggered.
Yeah.
One of the key things that we talk about is what triggers me, in the roadmap, what triggers me. And I was really, really triggered, and I was fully filled with self-doubt. It was self-doubt. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I'm not resourced. Yep. Why does he think this? Why does this coach think this way? And I feel like it's something big that could really help people, but who am I to say that? Who am I to try to help anybody?
Yeah. One of my favorite books is The War of Art.
Yes,
right?
I know.
And
Stephen Pressfield.
And he talks about in the pursuit of art, there's a invisible force called the resistance, right? That's trying to keep you from doing your best work all the time. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And one of resistance's best tricks is self-doubt. Like, I'm not good enough. Yes. Who am I to be bringing this to the world, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's so powerful, and it stops so many good people and so much good work.
And put it a different way, that is a trigger. That is something that triggers us and makes us feel like we are not good enough. Yep. And then our brain takes over, because our brain thinks, I got this. None of the other body systems, and I always say the emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical bodies have to be in alignment, right? And the brain, we're so used to having the brain be the master of everything.
Yeah.
And the brain is a terrible master. The brain is a fantastic tool and a terrible master. But yeah, I think like just looking at the roadmap, noticing really like some of the big triggers, and we have a lot of fun conversations about triggers in our podcast, but we don't ever talk about really the where it came from, like where we started to use it. And I would say, the roadmap really helps that. Yeah. Yeah.
So you're sitting on this big idea. You had some of the content developed. You and I were, I think, getting together for coffee one day, and for years and years and years, through business or not business, what would happen is you and I would get coffee, and then we'd sit and talk about something around self-awareness, right? We'd be off. Yeah. We're like
off to the races.
Coffee, and we're just like in la la land for like an hour, and for me, those times, it was just like, the time just like slipped away. Like I didn't even pay attention. I was just in the moment. The conversation was so great. I like love this topic. Yeah. Right. Yeah. You and I would like get into all of the different like parts of, self-awareness and feeling and like checking out with the other people that we know. What about this? Like, do you think he's very self-aware? Oh, no, not at all. Like, yeah, we do. We had a lot of fun in just like real world applications, like how it affects us being a mom or a dad, and how it affects us as spouses and, not each other's spouses, of course, but, how we interact with our lives. Yeah. And then, I don't know, we're just like, what we should do? We should just record this. Like, let's just start here. Yeah. Let's just make a podcast.
Yeah, let's just make a podcast.
Right? Which we've never done ever. Like, neither one of us have ever done a podcast. If anyone's like, I don't know, we're on episode something 28 or something. 28. Yeah. For those loyal listeners, they'll know the first ones were really rough, right? But that was part of the process for us, right? The journey. It was like, hey, okay, there's this big idea. We want to try to help people. We kind of had the intention set, right? But the project was still in this like overwhelmingly triggered state. Yeah. right? But we just took one little step at a time.
And I think too, like the thing that comes up for me when you talk about this is immediately as you were talking, like this is kind of a big thing that we've been working on together. It's, the output of this is fairly sizable. There's a lot of stuff now. And yet it can be something very small and little in our lives that we feel very strongly about. But if, like I noticed, even like in the roadmap too, we talk about feelings, right? And it's like, if I feel anxious or I don't like how I'm feeling, it will stilt me from being able to act.
Yeah.
If I don't like how I'm feeling, it makes me stumble all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about like how I perform outside of this. Like I'm an executive coach and I know I'm a good coach. I know I am. I know I'm good at my job. So it's not about my skill set. These are very subtle things like inside, like how I feel about things, And I think that really is worthy of pulling out. It's like as we're creating it, it doesn't have to be we're creating something massive. It could be something very, very little. But if you don't feel good about something, it really can prevent you from being authentic and going for it.
Yeah, I would say that I see all the time that people who are maybe extremely good at their job, there can be one small thing in their life that is upsetting them.
Yeah.
And that will affect everything. Yes. Like they'll even think they're bad at their job when they're amazing at their job, but they just have some other, thing in their life that's making them anxious.
Yeah. And that also the imposter syndrome conversation.
Oh yeah.
When you're really, really good, but you don't believe that you are, that's all right in here. Mm-hmm.
So developing the roadmap, right? Like you said, it went from drawings on the backs of receipts to kind of a very more structured kind of representation. And then it went to this like third version, which is just like, just some words to think about, right? And
a softer, gentler approach to being a human being.
and the idea of authentic self and actor self. And then we talked about the process of after you've been triggered, after you noticed you've been triggered.
Yeah.
Some tips on how to actually get back to your centered state.
Yeah, and those are listed at the bottom of the roadmap, and there are 3 R words, and even though.
Let me ask you before you like jump into like that.
Yep.
Right. Just in your like coaching experience, like you'd come across, like I'd say all your customers are listening, and I'm also going to say all your customers have been triggered. Sorry. I'm not helping your business.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Appreciate it. Get off my side right now, JJ. Go on now.
But really, like helping people get back, right? Yeah. Like a lot of your work is, both your professional and personal work is like, okay, so I know I'm in this like uneasy state. Yeah. How am I going to get back to a place where I'm feeling good again?
Yeah.
And so you developed some tips for that.
Yep, absolutely. I think we always start the journey, and I always like ask questions around how do you feel in your body when you're not happy? Like if something's making you upset or somebody's done something that's made you mad or hurt your feelings, where do you feel it in your body? So like getting a relationship with your body's cues of your feelings, because your feelings sit in your body, both positive and not positive, in different spots of your body. So it's like, where does that happen for you? Like JJ, if you get really upset about something makes you mad, where do you feel it in your body?
Yeah, I feel it like in my core, and I like shake. It makes me shake.
So if I get upset about something, I get an immediate stomach ache. Like I get a really upset stomach. And I bet on the outside, no one would have any idea. Either one of
Right.
us were triggered in those moments. But so like recognize it. So like if you feel really happy, if things are like right in the flow and you're just like, where do you feel that in your body?
Yeah, it feels more like light, and
Yeah.
I seem to like things like seem to be like, I don't know, faded away almost. Like there's not a lot. I'm just very focused in the moment.
Yeah. For me, like my chest feels like expansive. My shoulder, everything feels more open and more light, almost like floaty. That sounds funny, but that's how it feels. Like if I'm just so happy, I just feel light. And again, it's like the whole process of being able to recognize and be self-aware is, again, just being able to tie how your physical body is, your mental, I always say physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional bodies are in alignment. So it's getting a different relationship. First of all, is just understanding when your body's trying to tell you how you're feeling.
Yeah.
Because I think so often we just are so used to pushing those feelings away, ignoring them, or making excuses for them, or feeling guilty about them.
Yeah. So it's been quite a journey for you to develop the journey, right? Like
Yeah.
starting with some like, your basically lifelong work of
Yeah.
personal development, your
Yeah.
professional work with being an executive coach, like our work in Coreology with trying to develop coaching for everybody,
Right.
your ideas, your fancy Rodeo Drive vacation, and then us coming back together and working on the podcast and
Yeah.
creating the lessons, the video lessons on the
Right.
website, and then
Yeah.
the other content like our conversations, interview stuff, and
Right. Right.
like our work tips, all around the idea of just helping people with self-awareness, right? So
Right.
what is, in all this work, what is your hope for everybody? Like, what do
Yeah.
you hope this does for people?
Yeah. My hope is, I know where I started and how unhappy I was. Even though I was a successful person, I wasn't a happy person. And through this work, I have become happy. I feel very content inside. And when I'm in this contented space, I can do so much more. I am so much better for myself and for other people. I have purpose. I find it easier to create. I'm better in my jobs and in my relationships. And I know how good that feels. And in the world today, there's so much upheaval. There's so many reasons that people have to not feel good. And when you don't feel good, you're not contributing to your own life in the best way possible or in the lives of other people. And I really think that in this journey, you and I have talked about this a lot, is, my hope is that everyone can become more self-aware and head off at the pass the things that have torn them down in the past and made them not happy human beings. Because we all have, we have the right to be happy. That's our God-given right. Our birthright is to be happy. And if this helps that, I'm really happy for them. That's what I hope. That's what I hope, is that everyone can have that level of awareness and go out and be in the world however they want to be and help everyone else.
Yep. That's awesome. Well, it's fun to like just reflect back on about how some of this stuff came about, right? Again, I think we really hope it helps people.
Yeah.
And people are curious, they should definitely go check out all the other stuff on our website, which is selfawarenessjourney.com.
Yep.
And what's the plan? We're just going to keep making content, right? We're just going to keep, we work on it ourselves. Like we're students too.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly right. Yes.
And to me, that's one of the more fun parts of this whole thing is it's like, we're not here like, hey, we have all the answers. We're just here hey,
be in this with us.
Yeah. We want to start some conversations and hopefully it helps.
Yeah. And I would say too, because we've been kind of talking about this roadmap just in a wrap up today, is the roadmap. We actually developed 7 7 cool lessons about the roadmap, and each lesson is, I don't know, half hour, 40 minutes
40 minutes long, yep.
on the website. And at the end of each lesson, there's some worksheets that people can use if they're interested in, like, as we talked about, coming home, like, how do we do that? Or, exploring some of their own feelings and what triggers them. So hopefully people will find that a benefit.
All right. Well, thank you, Melissa, for all your work on this. And
yes.
We are glad that the resistance didn't take over this art project.
Well, thank you for breaking down the barriers of the resistance. That was you. We hope that you've enjoyed today's episode. Our mission is to help people become happier and more effective by gaining insight into their own thoughts and feelings. We'd love your support. First, share this podcast with anyone you think might enjoy it. Second, leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast site. This helps others discover the podcast so we can reach more people. And third, sign up for our newsletter at theselfawarenessjourney.com. This will help us communicate better with you and build our community. Thank you so much for joining us in the Self-Awareness Journey. We'll see you next week.